And it's very, very sad, but I have to say that the extraordinary tributes and the memories that everybody has had and been willing to share has been so fantastic, and it just goes to show
The story surrounding Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, has slowly turned into one of the most talked about royal discussions in recent years, not because of loud public drama, but because of what it quietly represents inside the modern monarchy. For decades, Edward was seen as the most low-profile member of the family, someone who avoided controversy, stayed away from headlines, and focused on duty rather than attention. Unlike other royals whose lives were often surrounded by public scrutiny, Edward built a reputation based on consistency and discipline. That image became even more important after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, when the structure of the royal family began to shift in visible and invisible ways. Before her death, Elizabeth made several decisions that were clearly meant to secure stability within the institution. And one of the most important of those decisions involved Edward. She had long intended for him to inherit the Duke of Edinburgh title, a role that had been held by Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, for more than 70 years. That title was not just symbolic. It carried history, responsibility, and a connection to a legacy that defined an entire era of the monarchy. When King Charles III officially granted Edward that title in 2023, it appeared to be a smooth continuation of that plan. However, what followed was not as simple as it looked from the outside. At the center of the discussion is Bagshot Park, the large estate where Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, have lived for many years. This property is not just a home. It represents independence, stability, and a long-term arrangement tied to the Crown estate. Edward originally took on the lease in the late 1990s, when the property was in poor condition and required major renovation. Instead of relying entirely on public funds, he invested a significant amount of his own money into restoring it, turning it into a fully functional royal residence. Over time, this created a situation where the property was not just assigned to him, but also shaped by his personal financial commitment. As the monarchy began to modernize under Charles, discussions reportedly emerged about reviewing royal assets, including properties and financial structures. While there is no confirmed public evidence of a direct legal conflict, the idea of reassessing long-standing arrangements raised questions about how much control the reigning monarch actually has over decisions made by a previous one. This is where the situation becomes more complex. The monarchy operates on both tradition and legal structure, and sometimes those two do not fully align. If a previous monarch made a decision that included legal agreements, reversing that decision is not always simple, even for a king. That creates a quiet but powerful tension between continuity and change. In this context, Edward's position appears unusually strong. His long-term lease, his financial investment, and the symbolic connection between the title and the estate all work together to create a situation that is difficult to challenge. At the same time, the broader conversation reflects a deeper issue within the royal family: how to balance modernization with respect for past commitments. Supporters of Charles often argue that reviewing royal finances and properties is necessary in a modern world where public accountability matters more than ever. On the other hand, those who focus on Edward's position see it as a matter of fairness and stability, especially given his consistent service and lack of controversy. This contrast has turned a quiet internal matter into a topic of public interest, even without official confirmation of conflict. What makes this story particularly compelling is not just a legal or financial angle, but the emotional and symbolic weight behind it. Edward represents a version of the monarchy that values duty without drama, while Charles represents a version that is trying to adapt and evolve. Neither position is inherently wrong, but when they meet, friction becomes almost unavoidable. And in a system where image and unity are extremely important, even the suggestion of disagreement can carry significant consequences. At the same time, another layer of discussion has added even more attention to the situation, focusing on personal items and royal traditions, particularly involving Queen Camilla and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. One of the most talked about elements is the question of royal jewelry, especially pieces that were given as gifts during Queen Elizabeth II's long reign. Among these, Sophie's wedding tiara, often referred to as the Anthem tiara, has become a symbol of a much larger issue. While there is no verified evidence of any formal attempt to reclaim it, discussions about how royal jewelry is classified, whether as private gifts or part of the crown collection, have sparked curiosity and speculation. This distinction matters because it reflects how personal relationships within the royal family intersect with institutional rules. Sophie's connection to Elizabeth was widely seen as warm and respectful, and over the years, she became one of the most trusted members of the inner circle. That relationship adds emotional weight to any conversation about items gifted during that time. If such gifts were ever questioned, it would not just be a legal matter, but also a deeply personal one. At the same time, Queen Camilla's position within the monarchy has always been complex. Over the years, her public image has gone through a significant transformation, moving from controversy to acceptance. As queen consort, she now plays a central role in shaping the current structure of the monarchy, and with that role comes influence over how traditions are interpreted and applied. This creates a situation where even routine administrative actions can be seen through a more dramatic lens, especially by the public. Adding to this dynamic is the presence of Princess Royal, who is often viewed as one of the most direct and disciplined members of the family. Anne's reputation for honesty and strong principles means that any situation involving fairness or respect for past decisions would naturally draw attention to her perspective, even if she does not speak publicly about it. The idea that different members of the royal family might hold different views on how to handle tradition versus change is not new, but in this case, it feels more visible because of the stakes involved. What makes this entire situation so powerful as a story is that it combines multiple layers: legal structure, personal loyalty, financial reality, and public perception. Even without confirmed conflict, the possibility of disagreement is enough to capture attention because it touches on something fundamental: the question of how much authority a current monarch has over decisions made by a previous one. For the public, this is not just about property or jewelry. It is about trust, continuity, and the meaning of a royal promise. If a decision made by one monarch can be easily changed by another, it raises questions about stability within the institution. On the other hand, if every past decision is treated as permanent, it limits the ability to adapt to a changing world. This balance is at the heart of the modern monarchy's challenge. Edward and Sophie, by maintaining a quiet and steady presence, represent continuity and respect for tradition. Charles and Camilla, by focusing on modernization and efficiency, represent change and adaptation. Both approaches are necessary, but when they intersect, they create stories like this. Stories that may not always be fully confirmed, but still reveal deeper truths about how the system works. In the end, what matters most is not whether every detail is proven, but what the discussion itself shows. It shows a monarchy that is evolving, a family that is navigating complex relationships, and an institution that must constantly balance its past with its future. The outcome of these discussions, whether fully visible to the public or not, has a lasting impact that goes far beyond one estate or one piece of jewelry, because it shapes how the monarchy will function in the years ahead. What makes this situation especially important is the way it quietly highlights a shift in power, not in a dramatic or official sense, but in how influence is understood within the royal structure. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, who spent most of his life outside the spotlight, now represents something much larger than his role suggests. His position shows that long-term consistency, careful planning, and respect for agreements can create a form of stability that is difficult to challenge, even at the highest level. This is not about confrontation in the traditional sense. It is about boundaries, about knowing what can and cannot be changed once it has been formally established. At the same time, King Charles III faces a different kind of pressure. As monarch, he carries the responsibility of shaping a modern institution that must remain relevant in a rapidly changing world. That includes reviewing structures, reducing costs, and ensuring that the monarchy reflects current expectations rather than past traditions alone. From that perspective, any review of properties, finances, or roles can be seen as part of a larger plan rather than a personal decision. However, the challenge comes when those plans meet long-standing arrangements that were carefully put in place by Queen Elizabeth II. Her reign lasted for decades, and during that time, she built a system based on trust, personal judgment, and continuity. When she made a decision, especially one supported by formal agreements, it carried a level of weight that is not easily replaced. This creates a situation where Charles must balance his authority as the current king with the legacy of the monarch who came before him. It is not simply a question of power. It is a question of how that power is used without weakening the foundation it depends on. In many ways, this is a central tension of the modern monarchy, and it becomes more visible in situations like this one. The presence of Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, adds another layer to this story, because her role is both personal and symbolic. Over the years, she has built a reputation for loyalty, professionalism, and quiet strength, often supporting causes without seeking attention. Her connection to Elizabeth was widely recognized as genuine and respectful, which makes any discussion involving items connected to that relationship feel more significant. Even without confirmed disputes, the idea that such personal gifts could be reevaluated raises questions about how the line is drawn between private and institutional property within the royal family. This is not a simple issue, because the monarchy operates in a space where personal lives and public roles are deeply connected. A gift from a monarch can carry both emotional meaning and historical value, and deciding how to classify it is not always straightforward. At the same time, Queen Camilla represents the evolving nature of the monarchy in a different way. Her journey into the royal family was not simple, and over time she has worked to establish her place within an institution that values tradition while slowly adapting to change. As queen consort, her role includes supporting the king and contributing to the overall direction of the monarchy, which means that her influence is naturally part of any broader discussion about structure and policy. This does not mean that every decision is personal, but it does mean that her position places her at the center of conversations about how the monarchy moves forward. When viewed together, these different roles create a complex picture where no single perspective fully explains what is happening. Instead, the situation reflects a system in transition, where old agreements meet new expectations, and where personal relationships intersect with institutional responsibilities. The involvement of Princess and Princess Royal further emphasizes this balance, as she is often seen as a steady and practical voice within the family. Her long record of service and her reputation for straightforward thinking make her an important figure in any internal discussion, even if those discussions are not publicly visible. She represents continuity in a different form, one that focuses on duty and discipline rather than symbolism. Together, these elements create a narrative that is less about conflict and more about adjustment, about how a historic institution responds to internal and external pressures without losing its core identity. For the public, this story offers a rare glimpse into the challenges behind the image of unity that the monarchy presents. It shows that even within a highly structured system, there are moments where interpretation, perspective, and individual roles can lead to different views on the same issue. And while not every detail may be confirmed, the broader themes are clear. The monarchy is not static. It is constantly evolving, shaped by the people within it and the decisions they make. As time moves forward, these kinds of situations will likely continue to appear, each one reflecting the ongoing effort to balance tradition with change. In the end, what stands out most is not a single event or decision, but the way the system adapts while maintaining a sense of continuity. That balance is what has allowed the monarchy to endure for so long, and it is what will determine how it moves into the future. As this situation continues to be discussed, what becomes even more important is how it may shape the future mindset of the next generation within the royal family, especially figures like James, Earl of Wessex, and Lady Louise Windsor. They are growing up in a version of the monarchy that is very different from the one their grandparents knew, where tradition still matters, but is constantly being tested by modern expectations. Watching how their parents, particularly Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, handle situations involving responsibility, agreements, and quiet resilience could leave a lasting impression on how they approach their own roles in the future. Unlike previous generations who often relied fully on the structure of the institution, this new generation is more aware that stability sometimes depends on preparation, understanding legal frameworks, and maintaining a degree of independence. That awareness does not necessarily weaken loyalty to the monarchy, but it does create a more cautious and thoughtful approach to how that loyalty is expressed. At the same time, figures like Prince William, Prince of Wales, and Catherine, Princess of Wales are also central to how this evolving balance will play out. As the future of the monarchy, their role involves observing current dynamics and learning from them, while also preparing to lead in a way that maintains public trust. They represent a bridge between tradition and modernity, and situations like this provide valuable lessons about the importance of clarity, communication, and respect for established agreements. While they may not be directly involved in every internal discussion, their position means that they're always connected to the broader direction of the institution. The way they respond, even quietly, can influence how unity is perceived both inside and outside the palace. This makes the entire situation not just about present circumstances, but about long-term continuity. For King Charles III, the challenge remains deeply personal, as well as institutional. He spent decades preparing for a role that requires both leadership and sensitivity, and now he must navigate a landscape where every decision is closely watched and often interpreted in multiple ways. The need to modernize the monarchy is real, especially in a time when public expectations are changing and transparency is increasingly valued. However, modernization cannot come at the cost of trust, particularly when it involves decisions made by Queen Elizabeth II, whose legacy still holds immense respect both within the family and among the public. This creates a situation where every action must be carefully considered, not only for its immediate effect, but also for how it will be viewed in the context of history. The presence of Queen Camilla adds another dimension to this balance, as she continues to establish her role within a system that has not always been easy for her to navigate. Her position requires her to support the king while also understanding the sensitivities that come with long-standing traditions and personal relationships. This is not a simple task, and it often means working within a space where public perception and private reality do not always align. As these different roles interact, the monarchy reveals itself as a system that is both structured and flexible, capable of adapting, but also deeply rooted in its history. The involvement of Princess Royal further highlights the importance of experience and perspective in maintaining that balance. Her approach, shaped by decades of service, reflects a commitment to duty that goes beyond short-term concerns. She represents a stabilizing influence, someone who understands the importance of both tradition and practicality, and who can navigate complex situations without unnecessary drama. When all these elements are considered together, the story becomes less about a single issue and more about the ongoing evolution of the monarchy itself. It shows how different generations bring different priorities, how personal relationships influence institutional decisions, and how the balance between continuity and change is constantly being tested. For the public, this offers a deeper understanding of what lies behind the carefully managed image of unity. It reveals a system that, while outwardly stable, is always adapting to new realities and challenges. In the end, the lasting impact of situations like this will not be measured by immediate outcomes, but by how they shape the future direction of the monarchy. Whether through quiet adjustments or more visible changes, each moment contributes to a larger process of transformation, ensuring that the institution continues to exist not just as a symbol of history, but as a living, evolving part of the present and the future. As the discussion gradually fades from headlines into quieter observation, what remains most significant is not a single decision or outcome, but the deeper shift in how the monarchy is understood both from within and